So this is a bit of a new format, and normally we do these bi-weekly, but I think what we realized there's a lot of things that accumulate within a month. So I think more of a monthly cadence made a lot more sense. I think there was more that we can discuss, and I think the new time, which is now 11 a.m. PST, seems to work for a lot of people. So it's great to see new faces. Right. So this format fairly loose, right? We have an agenda, but don't feel like we have to follow that. Honestly, we know we're going to be talking about new committers. We mentioned it last meeting that we had, but we'll just kind of give some shout outs to new committers. I think we added about 5. There's also going to be a demo, or really just a quick presentation by Kevin, who also got voted in as a committer to Marquez, and they're running Marquez at Northwestern, so Northwestern Mutual, sorry. So it's going to be great to see, I think, their use cases and sort of some feedback, and also maybe some pros and cons of running Marquez in production. And then we have Ross. He's gonna go into some graphs to really show us the growth of the project. Just around the packages that are being downloaded, and just a community growth. So he's going to be focusing on that. And then we have a upcoming release 0.16. So we'll kind of talk to you guys about what will be in there, some bug fixes, some new APIs, and yeah. So that's essentially the agenda. Fairly loose. I just kind of have content here, but since there's a lot of new faces, maybe we do some intros really quick. You can, as we go around, feel free. You can kind of just do a quick intro and maybe just tell us about what topics you'd like to discuss, or what parts of Marquez you're interested in. And after we go through the agenda that we have outlined here, we could do some deep dives into those. All right, so I'll go first. So I'm Willie, and I co-created Marquez and now maintaining the project. I worked at WeWork on the data platform team for about 2 years or so, where we incubated Marquez and actually worked with Lior, who's on the call. And now I'm at DataKin, which is a data lineage startup. And really what we're doing is the metadata that's collected by Marquez, we kind of expose these APIs that allow you to analyze the lineage metadata and kind of do versioning on the lineage graph. All right, so I'll just go from left to right. So I think, Peter, you're next on my screen.
Sure. So I'm Peter. I also work at DataKin. I am a software engineer. I've mostly worked on our visualizations and our clients for both Marquez and DataKin.
All right, thanks, Peter. And Lior, you're up.
Hello. Okay, I'm Leo. I'm from Tel Aviv, Israel. Me and Willie work together with Julian, and we work. I love the project and want to start committing, so I'm here.
Great to have you. Amanda, so you're on your iPhone, but feel free.
I am. I'm just going to say a few words. I'm in a car right now with my niece and nephew getting McDonald's. So if you hear some of that, we had to switch cars today. So that's why I'm out and about at this moment. So I apologize. I'm the head of operations at DataKin. Before that, I was at Luminary Media. And before that, at WeWork with several of you, and Laurent and Julian. And I am just here to listen in and learn more about Marquez.
Awesome. You've come to the right place.
I know. Okay.
Okay. So let me see. The names are not showing up on my screen here. Let's see. All right. So the names are gone. No, I actually don't know who to go next. But if someone wants to maybe raise their hand.
I was going to say Mike's there. I can tell you who's there, Peter. I mean, Willie. I can see.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead,
Ross.
Mike. Sure. Yeah. So I'm Mike. I work at DataKin as a software engineer. I've been here for about 4 or 5 months, I think. Prior to that, I worked at Cruise, and before that at Amazon. I've been building data pipelines, analytic systems for a while now. So got into the Marquez project because data lineage and metadata operations is something that I've had to build many times over. And so I'm very interested in seeing a common standard for this.
Nice. So I guess Ross, if you wanted to go next, because I know you and.
Yeah, sure. Here, I'm Ross Turk. I'm a VP marketing at Datakin, sort of in charge of words and pictures and storytelling. And I'm here today to share some stats that I've been gathering about Marquez and the growth of the community.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And if anyone else wanted to speak up, feel free. Just because I don't have the names, but if you wanted to introduce yourself, don't feel like you have to. But if you wanted to just quick intro, and sort of up to you.
Laurent, Victor, Gerald are on as well. I don't know how I'm able to see everybody on my iPhone, but it's working.
Mm.
And also Dalin and Antonio and Dominique.
Yeah, I can go next. My name is Victor. I'm a software team lead at Enverus. I'm just kind of exploring Marquez and data lineage / catalog tools. We're just basically trying to understand what we're doing with data, because we're doing a lot of things, but we understand little, track little. So yeah, I asked a couple of questions a few days ago on Slack, and I'm still exploring. So yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks.
Awesome. Welcome.
I'm Gerald. I'm a spy from the world of not open source. I'm actually from a company called CompilerWorks, and we generate lineage from logs and code. So potentially an input of lineage into Marquez, and I'm just here to learn because I don't know much about Marquez.
Okay, great. Mm-hmm.
I'm Laurent, and I'm the CTO of the CEO of Datakin. Sorry.
Okay. All right. So we got through the intros. Great. Thanks everyone for introducing yourselves and letting us know kind of why you're here. And I think there's a lot of content. And any questions, feel free as they come up, ask them, and we'll definitely have time at the end for additional questions. Okay, so I wanted to do the new committers really quick, right? This is, let me go back here. Here we go. So not too long ago, we had this vote, and we introduced 5 new committers, and so some of them are on the call. So we have Peter Hicks. So he a lot of contributions really to the Marquez UI. And I think for us, if you look at the Marquez UI, I think there's a lot of improvements that Peter has done. But at the same time, there's an additional work that needs to be done there. So I'm not sure, Marquez has a back end, but also the UI, and it'd be interesting to see the use cases for the people on the call. Are they mostly focusing on the back end side, or do they also use the full stack, which has the UI and back end side? So Peter, we had Daniel as well. He contributed the GraphQL API. So not a lot of people know that we have that. It's in beta, but you can access the GraphQL. Let me just go really quick to the repo here. So yeah, it's very much in an experimental state, and there's a lot of opportunity, I think, here to explore the lineage graph. So even though we have a REST API for accessing lineage, there's also a different way that you can access lineage through a graph API. So did a lot of work there, and as well as optimize the database in numerous ways as well. And then Maciej, yeah, he's been focusing a lot on the integrations, so I don't think he's on the call, but has been big contributions to the integration work for Airflow specifically. So there's support for Snowflake. There's actually a PR out for DBT. So get ready for that. That's going to be part of the 0.16 release, where we have for the most part, experimental with DBT, but we're extracting metadata and just looking for feedback on that when it's released. And Michael as well, who's on the call, and he's been a big focus is really on the Spark integration. And as of recently, when we get into what's coming in 0.16, he's actually exposing the job versions API. So a lot of really exciting work there. And of course, Kevin, which are you on the call, Kevin? I didn't see you.
I am, yeah. I didn't want to double introduce myself, but I suppose now I will.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, sure. So Kevin Mellott, I'm here. I work with Northwestern Mutual, and the other three folks on the call, Antonio, Dominic, and Dalin, are also awesome data engineers on my team. You'll hear a lot more about what we're doing in just a minute, but I'm really happy to be a part of the community and on the call here.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think one of the initial contributions that you had was the Helm chart. So it was a pretty rough state, I think, the initial version, and you kind of took it to a level where now you use it at Northwestern Mutual, but I think the community benefited from the contributions that you made. Thanks for that, Kevin. And maybe that's a pretty good segue, to be honest with you. If you want to take over, and I'll stop sharing my screen, but yeah, if you wanted to take it away and let us know about Marquez at Northwestern Mutual.
Yeah, for sure. So this will be pretty informal, but my hope is that if you're also trying to take Marquez into production or looking at this more from the enterprise view of things, that you might be able to learn from some of our experiences, or maybe find some places that you might want to collaborate with us. We're very open and eager to do those kind of things. But just to back up a little bit, so Northwestern Mutual, you probably have heard of us in the sense of insurance or insurance policies. Something that's a little less known is that we also do a lot around helping people with their financial planning, helping them understand the different investment strategies and things they might want to set up over the course of your career and your life. And I mention that because it helps you understand the sensitivity and the types of data that we're dealing with on a daily basis. Our company's also been around for over 160 years, so that's a lot of different data that's accumulated over that time. And so that kind of gets into some of the needs of a data platform for Northwestern, is just to find a way to treat all of this in a manner where you're properly dealing with things like PII and having all your audit trails, collecting all this data lineage. And so that's what our team was brought on to do within the past year. Is we hired a chief data officer that I know this group's probably very familiar with, Dan Vu, and he's really put a team in to do this type of exercise in a very formal capacity. But it's great to have that leadership in place, because, as you know, he understands the technical sides and also gives us a lot of room to do this. But one of the things that Northwestern didn't always do is really embrace contributing back to the open source community. So that's been one of the things that our team's been able to experiment with a bit, and had a really great time doing it. So that was part of the reasons as to why we first heard about Marquez, which is kind of someone saying, hey, look at this, this looks like it could be promising. And then when we dug into it, we were really attracted to the fact that it was, aligned with open lineage and this idea of a public specification. There wasn't any fear of, vendor lock or not being able to expand the functionality for what we needed. Our experiences off the get-go were very positive, because the quick starts were super simple to follow. Deploying into Kubernetes is what we do in a formal capacity, but that's also something that went really well for us. And then our data platform engineer skill set is just really well aligned with people that are really well versed in Java, Scala, Helm charts, that sort of thing. So that's what kind of got us started. And then some of the first efforts that we really tackled was, how do we take this thing all the way into production? So it was more than just something we were exploring. And so that's where the contributions around the Helm chart came into play. We did some things with the base images that helped our internal scanning policies pass all those. So the form that Marquez is in right now, I can tell you that for an insurance and financial services company, it does pass all the security checks. So that's a big plus. But that's some of the stuff that is just sort of like without that, it's a non-starter with a company like ours. So that was really important. We also got some things in there around the HTTP clients, getting the HTTPS support that was really helpful. And a lot of the current work has been around figuring out how do we effectively track lineage when we take data from a source system into our data lake. So really been exploring with a lot of the different types of data, the file-based data, database type of data, And that's where a lot of the conversations you've seen on the Slack channels around how to format something inside of like an open lineage message is really coming for us. I would say that the actual use cases that our company is really geared on around this, relating back to what Northwestern does, is a lot of things around when an auditor comes in and says, your financial advisor recommended this data product to a client. How do you know that the data they're using is reliable and trustworthy? That's where data lineage is a huge part for us. So Marquez has helped a ton with that. Another thing that is coming up for us soon is to be able to take a lot of the tagging involved in these data sets, incorporate that into our security policies and our security models. So I know there's an item on the roadmap for that, which we'll be very interested to learn more about and see how we can get involved. And right now with our development plan, a lot of the open lineage events that we're publishing are being done through our own custom code within our own custom integrations that we're working with. We're looking for more opportunities to get into the community integrations on those as well. So we do a lot with Spark. So that's one that is a kind of a no-brainer for us to get into. We're very interested in DBT, so it's great to hear about that one. Dagster is another one that's really on our radar to take a look at, as well as Trino. So that's kind of like the big brain dump. And then to kind of recap that, though, the experiences we had with the community has been amazing. So thank you all for that and for letting us take part in it and actually have a voice and help shape how things are going. It's just been a really good time and looking forward to continue with that.
Wow. Okay. So a lot there, and no, it's been great. I think just from the beginning, you know, when you joined the Slack channel, you kind of had these ideas around how we could shape the chart, and in general, just introducing Renovate. I think that was an interesting experience because we enabled it, and all of a sudden, all these PRs started opening up, and our CI just couldn't keep up. But no, it's, you know, you've made some significant changes there with the config and all that. But it's really great to hear the use cases that you have at Northwestern Mutual. The one question I have is, you know, when you generate some reports around maybe how data sets are being used by certain jobs, are you querying the API directly with the lineage API, which is going from beta to top level API, or are you kind of just querying the database directly?
Yeah, so it would be going through the lineage API, and that part's
Nice.
something that is more in development for us right now, but that is the plan that we're looking at. So one thing I didn't really explicitly mention is that we are trying to implement this data platform with that whole data mesh principles in mind. So trying to understand that all the different groups in Northwestern already have their own set of tools, their own understandings of the data. How do we just give them, you know, the ability to discover that and secure that data for them? But that's where the lineage API, we would be looking to use that as an internal component as we make that data information available to them. And I guess one more thing I probably should mention based on the introduction you gave is that we're currently using the API version of Marquez, as well as the GraphQL is very appealing to us. We don't currently use the UI, but that's totally just due to our use case, nothing to do with the UI itself. So we're being treated as a data platform, and there's a different team that handles all aspects of data governance and how that looks to the enterprise. So we just don't want to conflict with what they're trying to do there.
Yeah, that was my next question, because a lot, you know, in the Slack channel, there's a lot of questions around open lineage or just in general the lineage API and tracking, but there was not much about the UI, and so I kind of figured maybe you guys were just figuring on just building out the data platform with exposing the REST API for Marquez for lineage and collecting open lineage events. So that makes a lot of sense, and I think that's a common use case that we see. Totally nothing wrong with that. But you know, it is on our roadmap to, I think, to help out, because when you first try Marquez, you usually go through the UI, and right now I think there's some enhancements that could be made there. But yeah, it's interesting. So you have all these maybe UI components, and they hook into Marquez, and REST APIs are made that way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, and we've recently been building up our own sort of platform operations team. So there's probably a good chance that we might incorporate some version of that UI at that point. We're just pretty early in that stage right now.
Yeah. Well, hey, I really appreciate you sharing kind of your positive experience, you know, that you've had so far, and I think yeah, it's gonna be great to see as Marquez becomes more incorporated in your platform, some of the features that you guys will be proposing and hopefully contributing back. So excited to continue working together.
Yeah, same here. Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Kevin, if you're okay with taking questions, is there anyone on the call that maybe has some questions for Kevin? Okay. Well, awesome.
I'm curious.
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Sorry, Mike. If you didn't end up using Marquez, what direction might you have gone? Like, was there what were you originally planning to do to solve this problem when you found Marquez?
I'm so glad you asked that for different reasons. So I'm kind of an old timer, and so I've been trying to build data platforms for about 5 years now. And so at the beginning of that journey, none of these components really were readily accessible, I would say, maybe some proprietary ones, but having gone through the exercise of trying to build this type of functionality, I sure didn't want to do that. And we also wanted to stay away from something that would be a really heavy upfront investment, just because I feel like you want to stay agile within software development. But yeah, once we kind of saw that there was this whole approach of let's align all our tools, all our data publishers to this common specification, then at that point we were pretty much sold. Let's do this because it gets us into this framework, and it also leaves a lot of room for flexibility. So as an example that I know you might like, what if we one day want to go from Marquez to Datakin? We don't have to really do anything on our side. So.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm curious if you guys have, if you have any measurable impact on either, like the experience of your analysts or data scientists or your data engineers, like in metrics like, time to detecting errors or time to detecting or time to correcting errors, or do you have any way of kind of showing what the impact has been since you've been put this into production?
We haven't yet. So to date, a lot of our pipelines have been more around just bringing data from an external source system into our data platform. I think that the experiences you're talking about will get out a lot more over this coming quarter, where we're planning more of the data orchestration, data pipeline activities. So we haven't quite gotten to that consumable data layer yet, more just kind of helping to get things available for the analysts.
Mm-hmm. I had a question as well. I was curious kind of how you found the transition from Marquez directly to Open Lineage, because I think you were with us before we put together Open Lineage and the specification, and how you find kind of using both of them in comparison against one another.
Yeah, so I'll give my thoughts, and I kind of want to see if any of my fellow coworkers want to open up on this one. In my opinion, it was probably a little bit difficult, just because I think it was more due to us not having a really strong understanding of the differences between the two up front. So we had to have a little bit of a learning on our side for that. But publishing like data sets to kind of register them proactively, register the sources and all those sorts of things, it almost framed our internal framework in one fashion, and then we sort of pivoted it to the much easier fashion that Open Lineage provides. So I think that probably my biggest feedback is just if we had a better idea of sort of what the future target state was going to be, it might have better prepared us there. But I know a lot of it was sort of in flux and changing as we go, so it's one of those difficult things.
Yeah, and to your point that we felt the pain. So when we were doing the integration for Airflow, we realized how many calls were actually being made. And at the same time, it was actually kind of hard to coordinate the sequence as well of all the different individual calls that we had to make to Marquez in the initial phase of Airflow. And then that's when I think we pivoted and say, okay, now we need to kind of continue on with the Open Lineage spec and really make it a thing, because if we rely all of our adopters of Marquez to make those sequence of calls, it's really hard to juggle all that. And now if you look at the quick start for Marquez, it's just 2 calls and you're like, wow, okay. And then everything gets registered behind the scenes. So even when it's funny, even when I went through the quick start, when I was working on it, I was impressed. I'm like, wait, that's it. Before I had to do all these things, and steps that were usually 5 or 6 were reduced to 2. And I was like, oh wow, this is powerful. Even though I've been working on it, but I knew it would be beneficial to community. And we're working on, I think, communicating a lot better. I think the transition. So you were working on integrations and calling the individual API calls for Marquez directly. But you're right, we could have communicated a little bit better about how we were going to make the transition. So now we have projects that will help, and also a roadmap that you can kind of take a look at in the Marquez repo to get a better understanding of what's going on. So really good feedback there.
Yeah, and I did see the new quick start that's based on Open Lineage, and it's amazing. I mean, the original one was really good as well. I mean, just in terms of how to make the calls and use them. And for me, deleting code is one of my favorite exercises. So it's something as well. But I don't know, and Antonio or Dallin or Dominic, do you have anything you want to add?
I guess maybe a general thing to say. Also, hi, I'm Antonio Moctezuma. I'm a data engineer with Kevin over at Northwestern Mutual. But I think overall, my experience with learning Marquez and Open Lineage, it's had its struggles, but honestly, it is one of the easier things I've learned how to use. So yeah, it's been a positive experience for me, at least.
Okay, that's great. And what's interesting, we launched the Open Lineage site, which Ross, if you wanted to go into that a little bit, but yeah, there's a getting started there, which simplifies a lot. And it's kind of awesome that you were still able to stumble and be like, okay, I kind of know how to do this, which, it's a good sign that, we're simplifying things, and removing code, like you were saying, Kevin, is our goal as well. So the more we could remove, the better. And that's awesome to hear. But yeah, hi Antonio. Thanks for joining the call and also commenting a little bit about your experience. Okay, so I think if there's no more questions, again, thanks Kevin for doing this. Really great discussion, and I think it's been a while since we've really gotten feedback on Marquez, and we get it through the community through the questions, but But just having us share your story, I think, for me, it gets me more excited. So, okay, let's kind of continue what's positive, and also address some of the things that you mentioned. And yeah.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, even pre-Open Lineage, I mean, using those sort of like the legacy APIs directly, I mean, we were able to get lineage tracking on our source to sync going within like a single quarter, which is huge. I mean, that would have never been possible without that. So really good functionality.
Cool. And just one note on the APIs. So the only ones that will be deprecated is just the runs API. So you know how you create runs and then you register metadata for the run. That's being replaced by the Open Lineage endpoint, because since Open Lineage events are at the run level. But all the other APIs will remain the same, because you'll want to register jobs or data sets in a more ad hoc way. That's just a brief comment there. Okay, so let's check really quick here. So next, okay, so we got Ross. Yeah, this is more of the exciting stuff, graphs and things. So yeah, go ahead and take it away.
More of the exciting stuff. Well, what I'd like to share with you today, I started at Datakin a couple of months ago, and the first thing I wanted to do was start getting baselines for some really high level community stats. And that's what I'd like to share with you today is just the dashboard that I've built that pulls together a bunch of data sources from around the community. I don't have a lot of conclusions to share with you right now. I've just been gathering data for a couple of months now, but I wanted to share with you what I'm sharing. And I'll actually take this URL and paste it in the chat when I'm done as well. And I don't know if there's a follow-up that we send, but you should be able to get to this URL. This is a public thing at a tool called Databox that I use. So here in the upper left, GitHub stars. I track GitHub stars, which is kind of a trick to track because GitHub can't give them to you historically. So I'm pulling this into a BigQuery table, and it's grown 6% over the last 30 days compared to the 30 days before. So good, consistent growth on GitHub stars. Not a hockey stick shaped, but nice, consistent, reasonable growth. On pull requests, I'm looking at this mostly so I can find anomalies, like 24 pull requests in a day, which turned out to be some automated system. But I'm looking for peaks and valleys like this to see that like there's a big influx of new activity. Maybe it's for a particular reason that we want to know about. On the Slack front, I'm counting new Slack users who joined. We had 22 in the past month, which is pretty cool. That's up 5% from the number that had joined the month before that. Oh, incidentally, this graph is cumulative. So just understand that it's always going to go up and to the right. And the gray line behind it is the previous period's graph. So good growth. We had a little interesting bump in the previous month right here on Slack messages. A little quiet in the first part of the month, but we've been ramping up recently as we've been preparing releases and meetings and things like that. So I look at that just again to look and see if there's a big influx of activity. Now, some of the more interesting stuff. This is the number of Marquez Python downloads from PyPy for Marquez Python and Marquez Airflow. And I stopped counting these in May because something broke. So May's halfway counted, but the intent here is just to see how many rough pulls we're getting each month as a sort of an analog for the size of the integration ecosystem. And 6,300 pulls of Marquez Python in March is pretty good, I think. But we're tracking that, looking for anomalies. We had a really big month in March. I'm not sure exactly why, but I think we did a good release in that month. Willie, you might have more insight into what exactly happened in March to make it so big from a PyPy perspective.
Off the top of my head, I don't know.
Yeah. But these are good questions to ask. On the Docker Hub, so this is the number of Marquez image pulls that were pulled from Docker Hub. So this is not Marquez web. This is just the Marquez image. And oddly, a couple days in a row, someone did like 100,000 image pulls. And so that increased our baseline a lot and made the graph way less interesting than it normally looks. It normally has a little bit of more nuance in there, but somebody came and blew away all of our nuance. But still, close to 380,000 pulls of Marquez is pretty cool. It's hard to tell which of these are automated and whatnot. So we look for changes in these numbers more than the absolute numbers, but we're definitely tracking that. Again, had to pull that through some BigQuery stuff because there's no way to get that historically. And then on the far right side, the Marquez website has a predictable amount of traffic every month. And so that's another interesting question is how come it's so predictable? Very, very predictable amount of traffic going to that website. I mean, you can see the gray shape underneath is the last period, which lays right on top of this period. Again, a cumulative graph. And then down here are the number of views of this meeting's video when it gets published. So 16 views for a total of about 2 hours. So not a lot of watchers of this, but 16 views is more than attended probably last month. So we're getting a bit more reach there. And I think what this makes me think is maybe we can try to take little snippets of this meeting, the really important stuff, key decisions or really important topics, and make them smaller videos to make them a bit more easy to consume. But that was what I wanted to show today. Just let you know that I'm tracking all this stuff and give you access to this data board if you want it, if you're curious to track this as well. If you have any stats questions for me or particular things you want to study, I'd be happy to sort of take them and do research for the next meeting. I offer this as a resource to anybody who's interested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, thanks, Ross, for the overview. And I checked really quick the changelog. I think it had a lot to do with so we added a Snowflake extractor and also with Great Expectations. So there was support added to extract data quality metrics. So that may have been part of it. But I even though it's cumulative, I still get excited when it's a positive slope. And it's a good trend. But yeah, thanks for the breakdown. And so yeah, we'll definitely want to share it. And I think it's a good idea. Just going to send a quick summary of what we talked about here, and we'll definitely highlight those dashboards because they're exciting.
Do you think one quick comment? Do you think that all those Docker pulls might have been from the spike in the PRs and the automated build checks?
It could have been. Okay, let me share my screen again.
Yeah.
Sorry, are you looking at sort of this spike here and seeing if it lays on top of this spike here?
The one right below that, the Docker Hub pulls.
Oh, this one. Yeah, it could have, but these are different. This is over the last 30 days, and this one is December 2019.
Okay.
Yeah, good thing to point out, Kevin. We actually recently changed it where we don't do a pull anymore. We build the Docker image because the Airflow integration pulls the images for Marquez. but we have it now where we just build the image and use that in CI. I still wouldn't expect it to be, that big of a jump though.
Cool. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
This totally to me looks like someone left a shell script with a while loop unattended for a while.
Right.
Looks like a mistake.
All right, so last part here. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about what's coming in 0.16. I know 0.15 went out, and maybe we could look at the changelog really quick there. But I think the reason why 0.16 is significant is that one, there are a lot of features coming out, some bug fixes. But when we release 0.16, on our roadmap is to also donate the integrations that we have, so Airflow, Spark, and DBT, and donate that to Open Lineage. So it's been great, I think, for the Marquez community to have ongoing work with those. But now that all the integrations emit Open Lineage events, it kind of makes sense to move them over and have more, I think, visibility on those integrations, and also an example if others want to contribute integrations for, like you were saying, Kevin, for Dexter. There's now you have examples in the Open Lineage repo that could enable you to contribute some integrations there. Okay. Okay, let me go here. So like I mentioned before, we have projects, there's a roadmap. So if you want a kind of understanding of what's to come, there's a roadmap here. But for 0.16, I just want to highlight a few things, and because some of the questions came up in Slack, I think one of the bigger ones is really, how do you register files? So right now, the data sets have DB tables, or it's a stream. We're actually going to do away, we're kind of trying to do away with that and have it where the source is really, whether it's S3 or if it's Postgres, the source is really what identifies the type of data set. So there was this issue where if you provided a UR link for the source name, it didn't encode correctly. So that's now fixed. And yeah, so that's going to be coming out. So now you'll be able to register an S3 bucket and also the path as the data set, and something that actually the Spark integration is doing. So that's going to be supported. There's also the tag API. So there was the tag API came out in 0.15, but now there was an issue where the tag description wasn't being set. So that's also has been fixed. And there's a few additions to Great Expectations. So the fastest just around failed and past assertions. That's also going to be coming there. And let's see really quick here. Actually, the key, this is the one I kind of been mentioning throughout the meeting, is we're going to be promoting the Lineage API. So so the one that you could actually query. So given a node ID, you could query for the lineage graph for a data setter job. So that's going to be moved from beta into a top level API. So initially we developed the API Datakin. So just on the back end, we needed a graph, a representation of the metadata that was stored in Marquez. So that was a big focus for us. So we've been testing it out in production for quite some time, and then we eventually pushed it out to Marquez, and wanted to make sure that it was in beta just in case we wanted to change anything. But it looks like in a pretty good state. So we're gonna make that a top level API. And specifically, Mike made some pretty amazing contributions to the back end sort of query that gets the lineage graph. Significant improvements, and I know a lot of people aren't aware about some of its changes, but I think that would be an exciting thing that we could talk in future community meetings, because it what was the stats? It went the performance increased significantly. But yeah, so that's something I think we should talk about. And a few other things that, I think the DBT integration is a really big one. We're starting to see a really big need for that. So there's a PR out, fairly big. So, we're kind of trying to make sure that we kind of look at the changes that are coming in, but we also know it's experimental. So we want to make sure that gets in there in the 0.16 release. And let me see. Oh yeah, and Mike, you could talk about this one. I know I skipped over some things that are in progress, but you've been working So right now, Marquez has a way to access dataset versions, but in particular, there's been this ongoing effort to expose the job versions API. And Mike, you've been doing some pretty amazing work there. So you wanted to briefly talk about that or highlight some of the work you've been doing?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's I think that being able to trace run level lineage is something that's really important for a number of reasons, for operations, but also for just being able to use the change, being able to track the changes that you're making in your code and seeing how they're impacting downstream jobs or downstream versions of the data set. So, if you wanted to make your, say, data cleanup logic a little bit more efficient, clean out unused records, that kind of thing, seeing how that change actually has an impact on your jobs that are running downstream. Are they running faster, or are they the data quality metrics, are they still correct, right? So yeah, one of the things that I'm working on is trying to add both the job version API, so you can see all the different versions of the job and like things like what the GitHub location were, what the latest run of that job version was, but then also adding the inputs and outputs to the run API, so that way you can see which dataset version was consumed for a run and which job version was used to execute that run, just so that way you can kind of manually walk up that run level lineage.
Yeah, and that's a good point to make, actually. So what we're going to be doing to the runs API is that you're going to be able to see the version of the input data set that was part of that run, but also what version it created. Right now, that isn't accessible, and actually makes sense to have it at the run level. And then when you look at the job version API, it's still going to have your code, still going to have all the details around the job, but the input data sets are going to be the dataset ID. So it's not going to be version specific. You'd have to query the runs API to do that. But I know there's kind of a lot of content there, and Mike's actually working on getting a PR out, but he's also working on a blog that really facilitated the need to extend the API. So I think that's an awesome addition, and something you don't really think about until you kind of write a blog that has a specific use case that you'd expect Marquez to have, and it doesn't. So yeah. Okay. I think the one thing I did want to address. So there's going to be some ongoing discussion, and I'm going to open up an issue to start the discussion. But there was an issue where Open Lineage, when we accepted an event, the job did not create the input data sets or version them, and really the Open Lineage spec doesn't really specify whether the job that reads the data set should create it or should create a new version, because you might have an issue where there's an upstream job that has as an output data set and creates a version, and then when the job downstream, when it's running and it has an input data set, it could version it, like maybe it's modifying the schema. So you could have this inconsistency with one job is posting one version of the schema, and a downstream job might not have the correct one, or it's an older version of the schema. So there could be some race conditions there. Just know that we had a quick fix that went out in 0.15, but really what we want to do is have a more broader discussion around what, as a producer, or I'm sorry, as a consumer of an Open Lineage event, what should we do, and how should Marquez handle that? So I'll post it in the Slack channel sometime today. And for those that are interested in those type of discussions, you can chime in, because we're looking for feedback, especially from the community, about the best way to handle that. Okay. So yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to go over in 0.16. And I think the plan is sometime next week, we want to get a release out, and then shortly after that, we want to possibly begin moving the Marquez integrations over to Open Lineage, so we might be able to do that in parallel. And with that, so we have just over 10 minutes, and this could be, just a general discussion, because we went through the agenda, which was great. There was a lot of really exciting things. Again, Kevin just telling us about Northwestern Mutual and use cases of Marquez, and Ross giving us some nice dashboards to look at. It's always nice. And yeah, so that was really all I had. And now it's just more open discussion. We could talk about metadata or maybe something else. Yeah.
Just regarding the lineage API, the performance improvements. I think there's a fun graph that I shared on Twitter, and I think was retweeted by the Marquez account or by the Open Lineage account. Yeah, so if you have a moment, log on to Twitter and take a look at that graph. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I'm looking. I know we've retweeted it. Let's see. Or at least I thought I did. Okay, well, while I'm looking for that, did anyone have any other questions? Okay, awesome. When I find it, I'll Slack it in Slack it in our channel, so that way you guys could take a look. And maybe Mike, that's a good opportunity. Maybe next meeting if you, or in future ones if you wanted to go over that and just go over the query. But you could also link the query as well, and you could kind of see the diff between before and after, and it's pretty significant overall query time change. So with that, I just wanted to say, it looks like this new format works monthly and also this time frame. So we were able to see a lot more new faces, and I'm hoping to see more. And also, thanks again, Kevin, for walking us through your use case. But yeah, we'll chat more on Slack. And with that, I think I just want to say, yeah, thanks again. This was for me. I enjoyed this. It was a lot of fun, and I think it's good content as well. And oh yeah, one last thing. So maybe if there's for those on the call, if there's something, maybe if you want to do a similar talk like Kevin, or just kind of share your story, please do, or Slack one of us, and we can kind of arrange something where you could give a talk, or maybe there's certain topics that you want to discuss. So feel free and let us know and Slack us directly. And with that, we could kind of conclude it. Awesome. And yeah, everyone have a great day, and I guess we'll see you at the next month community meeting.